the European institutions are now really concerned to what is happening in Brussels, in the town, out of their offices in the town. So they are making things differently than they would have done 10 years ago. They take care of the people living around there, the people coming in their quarter, and things like that. This is a big difference that we made during these 10 years.
That was the Brussels Commissioner for Europe, Alain Hutchinson, on how the relationship between the EU and its unofficial capital city have evolved in the past decade. Now, the local and supranational enjoy a synergy that benefits both. However, integrating the institutions with the fabric of Brussels has been a decades-long project, one which only recently started bearing fruits. So how does the Brussels chief tasked with building bridges between the international organizations and the Belgian capital succeed in his task? What is his office doing to support expats? And which challenges remain for the internationals who call Brussels their home? We'll get back to the matter in a few moments.
This is Radio Schuman, your go-to podcast to spice up your weekday with relevant news, in-depth analysis, insights, and behind the scenes from Brussels and beyond.
I'm your host, Lauren Walker. It's Friday, May the 23rd. In this episode, we speak with Alain Hutchinson, the Brussels Commissioner for Brussels, who for the past 10 years has been working to forge ties between the EU institutions and their capital city. We'll also look at a NATO meeting in the United States at a time when growing transatlantic chasm is raising concerns about the alliance's existential questions, including Ukraine's future and European security. And finally, from fake cosmetics to false toys, which EU countries are prime targets for counterfeit products? Brussels is the second most cosmopolitan city in the world, a status owed largely to the presence of the EU institutions and intergovernmental organizations like NATO. However, it gained its standing as EU capital not as a result of a purposeful decision by member states, but more due to years of indecisiveness. The European coal and steel community, the precursor of today's European Union, started looking for a base in 1952. But it wasn't until much later, in 1992, that the Belgian capital was recognized as a European capital. The process of Brussels embracing its role was equally arduous. It took the city about 20 years to realize it had an important role as the European capital. Locals, meanwhile, initially opposed the idea, fearing people from abroad were taking jobs and pushing up house prices. The institutions felt ignored, feeding a perception that Belgium lacked interest in the so-called EU bubble. We spoke with Alain Hutchinson, who was instrumental in building the missing bridges, about how ties between Brussels' public authorities and the EU institutions located here, as well as their workers, eventually strengthened. Alain, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, it's a pleasure.
So you are the Brussels Commissioner for Europe, a role which was created just over 10 years ago. What does this role entail and why was it created? And maybe what was the situation like before?
Well, it was created because inevitably Brussels became a real international region, a real international city. But nothing was made to make this statute, this new situation, smoothly for all the partners, all the international partners coming to Brussels. At that time, 10 years before we created the commissioner, the what we call politique de siège, seat politique, was in charge exclusively of the federal government. But most of the questions, almost all of the questions and all the needs of the international or European institution, international organizations concerned mainly the region. So there was a lack there and they didn't get any answer to their questions and they were quite sad about this and quite upset about this situation. And that's why we proposed to create this commissioner. I had been a member of the European Parliament and of the Committee of the Regions, and I know many people in there, many civil servants, but also many political responsible of the institutions, and I knew that this situation was open to them. These are the reason why we created this 10 years ago. The government asked me to create this commissioner, and we did so in two parts. The first one to say it shortly, make everything to welcome the institutions, make everything so that they can have all they need to work properly, efficiently here in Brussels. And secondly, welcome all the expats, as we call them, all the people coming from abroad, and to work and live in Brussels. And for some of them, spend all their life in Brussels. But when they arrive as young expats, it's quite difficult sometimes to settle down. We are there with our Welcome Expat desk to help them to do this.
And you said that your role was really filling a gap, so it was very new. What were the key challenges you faced in your first few years?
We have very small and very big questions from the institutions and for the organizations. For example, there is the refurbishing of Schuman for the moment, of the Rond-Point Schuman, which is becoming the Schuman space because it won't be a Rond-Point anymore, is a very big challenge for Brussels, but also for the institution. Around this roundabout, you have the Commission, the Council, and the external services of the EU, plus so many embassies and things like that. So the challenge was to put everybody together, the Brussels representative and the international representative, and try to find a solution which would agree everybody in this very symbolic place. That was an example of a big challenge we had to do, and it's going on now. And you have very small things and medium things. For example, the Commission recently asked us to find a solution because they had parking just in front of their entrance in the Tower 1 in the Rue de la Loi. And they wanted to get rid of this because they thought it was a security problem for them because there was no control on this parking. So we did so, and the parking is not there anymore. And we proposed to the Commission to take this place and to renew it and to make it as an entrance of their tower where they have all their offices. It's also the problems of security. They've asked us to make this many interventions in the public field to be sure that all these buildings would be secured as they should be, not only the European institution, but also NATO and also other organizations, international organizations in Brussels.
And you already touched on it there yourself by mentioning the expats. There is a very human side to your work as well. Can you tell us a bit more or give examples of situations where you're requested to help the people who move to Brussels to work in these organizations?
I think that it's always a challenge to come from abroad and to settle down in a city you don't know. You don't know anybody, you don't know the place, you don't know how to move, what you have to do on an administrative So that's the job of the expat welcome desk. The most of the questions are related to accommodation. Where can I live? What kind of text can I sign with my landlord? And things like that. The second one would be all the administrative problems they very often have in the communes, in the local authorities, for their papers, for their registrations, for their residence, and so on. They don't understand how it works. We explain and we intervene with the different communes in Brussels to make things easier. It's not yet the best we can dream, but it's improving very much. In most of the commune now, we have people speaking English at the offices. Our expats are going, so it's an improvement. The third question we have on our statistical is taxes. We organize seminaries very regularly on different themes about taxes.
And then back to Brussels, which is the home, of course, of the institutions. It's been rocked by several shootings this year, mostly drug-related. Have the organizations that you regularly meet with expressed concern about this happening in the city where they're located?
Well, they're concerned about their safety. And one of the big differences since these 10 last years is that on one side, the Brussels institution, regional, local institution, take more and more care of the international organization and the European institution. And on the other side, the European institutions and the international, but mostly the European institutions, are now really concerned to what is happening in Brussels, in the town, out of their offices in the town. So they are making things differently than they would have done 10 years ago. They take care of the people living around there, the people coming in their quarter, and things like that. This is a big difference that we made during these 10 years. It's respect of one and the others. And I think that is a very positive improvement.
And so how do they then feel if they're now looking more outward outside of their own little bubble? How do they then feel about these situations and shootings?
Well, they feel like I think everybody feels. It's Well, I want to say it's not a particularity of Brussels. If you go in any big city in Europe or out of Europe either, you have this kind of problem. Drug is a problem. Drug dealing is a problem everywhere. I never had the institution never asked me anything about this, except when the minister at that time, Pascal Smet, proposed to the institution to open offices in the Quartier Nord. You have a few European civil servants who were afraid of going there because of drugs and so on. But it's the only time I was approached by the institution about this kind of problems. I don't think they feel insecure in Brussels, nor the institution, nor the people working in these institutions.
And as you mentioned in the recent annual report you published, you're still in your position, even though your term is expected to end last year. Why is this?
Well, because to replace me, we need a government. It's the government who can decide what my function as a commissioner is a political mandate, and it is an important political mandate. So it has to be decided politically by those who are in power at the region. The actual government in affaires courantes, as we say, there's not the possibility to replace me. We must wait for the new government. So I thought I would have been gone 1 year ago, almost 1 year ago, but I'm still there. Well, like the ministers and all the members of the government, everybody's there waiting that a political solution could be found. It's a very nice job, but I think I've made my time, and I'll be very happy to see somebody else coming, and I hope the future government will choose somebody competent, somebody who is involved in these problems.
And aside from you having to wait slightly longer before you can put down your job, what problems has the lack of a Brussels government posed for the work you have to do? And maybe is it impeding the international organizations that you meet with as well, or?
No, things are going on, and the actual government is still working, and all the administrations are working. There's nothing new happening, because to have new things and a new budget, I think we need a new majority, a new political majority in the government, but in the parliament. But everybody's working. So the only problem is that, for example, every year since 10 years, we have been organizing we call it a mini summit between the regional ministers, all the ministers concerned about all these problems, and the political responsible and the high administrative responsible of the EU institutions. We do this once a year. Well, we haven't done it in 2024 because we were waiting for the new government to organize this. It never came, so now we're going to organize it this year. I don't know who will be around the table on the Brussels side. I know now who will be those on the European side. We know all the new commissioner, new vice presidents of the parliaments and so on, but we don't know who will be on the side of the Brussels government. For the rest, we are there. When the council asked us to organize the contacts between the council and the regional administration because they intend to renew, which will be a big deal, to renew the Juste Lips, we did this. We're doing this for the moment. Nothing has stopped.
Finally, looking back at your 10 years in your position, do you think Brussels has come to embrace its role as European capital, or do you think there are still improvements needed?
No, I think things improved a lot. In the regional administrations, in the local administrations, things have improved a lot. The Brussels civil servants, mainly the younger civil servants, they speak English. They are concerned because they were born in an international city, which was not the case of the ones before. So and the work we do with the internationals, but also with our own civil servants, is proving its efficiency, and things are getting better. I think Brussels is still a bit shy for enlarging the international presence in the region. We don't do enough to make new agencies, new organizations come to Brussels. That's my only regret when I leave the commissioner.
Now, a look at what else is on the agenda today. We head to Dayton, Ohio, where the biannual NATO Parliamentary Assembly is taking place. After days of discussing topics ranging from the Russian war in Ukraine to enrichment in the Arctic region, delegates hope to establish and strengthen international ties. The gathering comes at a precarious time for relationships within the alliance. The Trump administration has cast doubt over whether the US would defend European NATO allies without them committing to increased defense spending. Meanwhile, the choice of location is not arbitrary, as the Spring Assembly commemorates the 30-year anniversary of the Dayton Peace Accords, created in the Ohioan city. These helped to end the Bosnian Civil War after 3.5 years of armed conflict. And finally, over to one of Euronews' top picks. The EU is being inundated with counterfeit goods, including clothing, toys, and makeup. As most of these items are produced in an unregulated environment, they can be harmful to European consumers' health and safety. Trade of such products also fuels corruption and organized crime. 20 of the world's top 25 destinations for counterfeit products are located in the EU, according to OECD data. Germany ranks first place globally when it comes to the value of seized goods, with the country confiscating more than a quarter of the total value of fake products. France and Belgium are also prime targets. More than half of the products destined for the EU came from China, while mail is the most common smuggling route. You can read the full story by Alessio Del Anna on euronews.com. Now, we're stepping away from the mic for a little while. In the meantime, we will brainstorm to bring you even better content. Thank you for your continued support and stay tuned. That's it for Radio Schuman today. I'm your host and producer, Lauren Walker. Sound editing was done by David Brodheim, and music was by Alexandre Jass.
If you aren't already, you can listen to this series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, or wherever you get your podcasts.